Hello again, this is SteelZenith, and somehow I cocked up the recording for Minmus. Basically I hit the record button while I was on my way there, and I cut out a huge amount of the video. At any rate, I'm going to be launching there again with the same rocket. There will be already a flag there, but this is basically a redo of a mission I've already done, which I've got the science for, which I apologise for. At any rate, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, let's go. As you can see, I've kind of copied my moon rocket with a few modifications to it. Plenty of struts. We've got this three-way mirrored landing stage strapped to the module itself, and with our parachutes and experiments on top. So rather than go through this getting to orbit bit, I'll skip and then join you once I'm in orbit around Kerbin. So here you can see I've got into orbit around Kerbin, and I'm just going to set up a maneuver node to get to Minmus. Now with Minmus it's a similar principle to getting to the moon. You want to burn roughly when it's coming above the horizon from the perspective of the spacecraft, and that's about at a 90-degree angle relative to Kerbin. The problem with going to Minmus and generally performing maneuvers in the Kerbin system is that the moon quite often gets in the way, so I'm going to have to cancel that maneuver node and just go around Kerbin a couple of times. So I'll see you when I get to a point where I can set it up without intercepting the moon, being intercepted by the... Here we are again. I'm just going to set Minmus as the target, and then pick a point roughly 90 degrees. So just fiddling with the maneuver node here, you can see to get there I'm burning a bit early, I believe, so move that slightly forwards, decrease the amount of fuel, delta V rather. This is a bit tricky because you need to grab hold of that. As you can see, closest approach is about there. Now if you look at it from the side, you can see that Minmus is on a slightly different plane than Kerbin and the moon. So what we probably want to do is set up another maneuver node at the descending node here, and burn slightly north, as you saw, was slightly south of Minmus, and there we already have a periapse, so I'm just going to adjust that slightly. So still slightly far off where Minmus is going to be, but I can do a course correction while on my way there. In fact, I could decrease this delta V slightly. However, that will screw it up. The problem with performing maneuvers so far away from your target is that tiny changes in delta V can cause massive changes in your eventual course. Well, obviously, from an efficiency perspective, that's great. From the perspective of actually doing those maneuvers, it's very tricky to get them spot on. So let's see what that does for us. Just going to cut this out for now. You get the principle, and I'll set it up so that I get a better or closer periapse to Minmus, and then see you when I've performed the maneuvers. So I managed to just perform one maneuver to get out there. However, we are going to have to tweak our course slightly when we get a bit closer. 430,000 meters is not bad for one single burn. We can get it closer, but there's really not that much need for that kind of efficiency, especially with the amount of fuel we have, and these plus the delta V of these three engines is way more than we need. As said, I often over-engineer my ships just to give me that leeway in terms of making mistakes and being able to perform course corrections en route. So I'll perform the course correction on camera to show you what I'm doing, and then we'll get into orbit around Minmus. See you there. So something very odd has happened. I can't seem to set maneuver nodes at the moment. However, if you look, I'm slightly south of the orbit of Minmus, so I'm just going to burn to the north. Didn't seem to have the desired effect. I can add maneuver nodes on here, but I can't add maneuvers on the blue path, which I'm currently on. That's a slight bug in the game. It is, after all, still in beta, and this is going around like crazy. Anyway, let's see. Basically, what I could do is get out to my apoapsis and then slow down, see where Minmus is in relation to me, and just burn towards it, which is what I think I'll do. See that? So as it turned out, it was merely glitching out, and I just accelerated towards the point where I reached my apoapsis, and suddenly this course showed up. Not quite sure what was going on, but at any rate, we've got our periapse for Minmus, and we'll just add the maneuver to slow down roughly when we're at the periapse. It's going to take that orbit right down, which will let us choose a landing site. And I'll just turn so that I'm already pointed roughly in the direction of the maneuver node, and then perform that maneuver. And be back when I've done so. So here we are in orbit around Minmus, as you can see. I just performed that maneuver node, and now we have about 70,000 meter, 70 kilometer orbit around Minmus. Now with Minmus, the easiest thing to do is land on these slightly bluish, well, it's all bluish, but they're slightly more blue than the highlands. And these are flat areas that are at 0 meters altitude on your altimeter. It makes it really easy to land on here. So what we want to do is we want to burn roughly on the opposite side of the moon to where they are, and bring our periapse down to close to about 5,000 4,000 meters. That'll do. Just going to do this, tweak this slightly so that our periapse is roughly above where these flat areas are. The thing to do here is basically you want to get your periapse pretty low. I don't want to make it too low because, as you can see, these mountains are quite high. And then you want to kill all your lateral velocity at this point at the periapse and basically burn as little as possible when descending down to the moon or planet. In this case it's not really necessary. Minmus is very low gravity, so it's not hard to kill your vertical velocity, but at the same time it's good practice, and we'll need to do it later to be more efficient with our landing, but especially around heavier objects. Anyway, I'm going to cut the video here, and I'll bring you back when I'm performing the landing. So here we are about to do this burn just to bring us into the low course pass on Minmus. And that's about right. So just kill that maneuver node, and then I forgot that Minmus will be rotating below us, so this is way off now. Not that it really matters that much. I can just do a burn somewhere around here and bring us back. However, again, doing this kind of mistake when you're landing on a heavier body would be a lot more expensive in terms of delta V, and you'd waste more. But this huge amount of fuel and these 3 engines are overkill for landing on Minmus. Really, I should have just put the 1 engine on there, on the main body, and just had the fuel tanks around if I was going to do it this way. Anyway, I'll get into landing trajectory and rejoin you there. So as luck would have it, there is actually another lake bed, or whatever you want to call it, just where we're passing over when we reach our periapse. And I'll land us somewhere here. So what I want to do is find my retrograde marker. And rather than use maneuver nodes for this, I'm just going to do it manually. It's easier that way. Now, despite the fact that I can see what's going on screen, I'm always looking at my nav ball. You should pretty much ignore the screen for navigation purposes. Learn to read the nav ball as well as possible, just to because essentially the what's shown on screen really is irrelevant, except when you're performing the final landing. So I'm coming in slightly too far north, I think. Can't really tell. Of this bed, and I'll end up landing on the side of it. So I want to burn this way, just to make sure that my trajectory takes me over the lake bed, and sort of like a salt lake on Earth, really, I suppose. It's definitely frozen. Some sort of liquid that's frozen over to cause this kind of flat surface. So as you can see, I'm just burning roughly along my retrograde marker, and we want to get it so that it's pointed straight up, because that means we've killed all our lateral velocity. As you saw, it suddenly switched from orbit to surface, the trajectory, and you can do that by left clicking on here, or it will do it automatically when it reaches a certain height above the body. So essentially now I'm just going to fold the gear out and let my altitude sink to just above the surface, and then perform the burn wet there. So here we are, plummeting towards the planetary surface, and I just slowly want to kill that vertical velocity. Plenty of delta V in this thing, I really don't need this much, as I said before. But, hindsight is 20/20. So really you want to burn as close to the surface as possible, just to avoid wasting fuel. But I'm being a bit overly cautious about this, which is okay. I mean, you can see I can't even at minimum bird, I'm actually decelerating faster than the gravity of the body is pulling me in. Just trying to keep it about 2 meters a second. And touchdown. Kill the engines. There we are. So what I did last time, obviously, it was run all the experiments while descending and while orbiting, etc, etc, and then EVA my pilot. What I forgot to do, I think, oh no, I did record a temperature. You see, you can record the temperature when you're close to a body. Obviously I EVA'd and then got a surface sample, which for the sake of recreation we'll do here. As you can see, the gravity on Minmus really is nothing. In fact, if I jump, you can see how high I get just by jumping on here. Really is quite ludicrous. There are other bodies that are even lower gravity than Minmus, but it is one of the smallest things you can land on. So we take a surface sample. As you can see, I get less, and do an EVA report, plant a flag, so we'll call this Minmus Take 2. Sorry. Really shouldn't be quoting that awful song, but it seems like appropriate. Anyway, just get back into the ship. As you can see, you really don't actually need any ladders for these early missions, and you don't get them until later on anyway in the tech tree. But you can just use the rocket pack, which incidentally the default key is R to activate it, and use that to move around. So just taking a look at where we are, roughly on the equator, doesn't really matter that much. Kevin's got really big gravity fields, so we'll just decelerate our orbit and allow it to pull us in. So taking off from here, there's no atmosphere, so we can just burn straight away towards the east. Just get a bit of height to avoid crashing into any mountains. Fold away the gear. As you can see, you really don't need much delta V to get going on an orbit here. The gravity is that low. So I just get my apoapsis up to somewhere around 70,000, that'll do. Get into orbit, and then again we want to burn when we're closest to Kerbin from Minmus's orbit. Just burn along this orbital vector, like the orbit of Minmus, and that'll take us out of Minmus's influence and slow our orbit around Kerbin down to a point where Kerbin's gravity will just pull us in. So just performing the orbital maneuvers, getting into orbit, burning prograde at the apoaps, and circularizing. So that'll do. It's not exact, but it doesn't need to be very exact. And then, just for the sake of illustration, I'll add the maneuver node here. As you can see, escape achieved very easily, and just carry on. Increasing our prograde delta V until the periaps is at in the atmosphere of Kerbin. Now, this is an interesting thing. You can actually easily get Mun intercepts while returning from other bodies, and if you need a bit of additional science, it's a good way of doing it, because the Mun has all the different areas of science that you can easily grab extra science from missions. So there we go. Periaps is well within the atmosphere of Kerbin, so we'll just perform that maneuver and drift on down to Kerbin. So I've missed it by a tiny bit, but it doesn't really matter that much. Just let it go down. Oh, there's that moon intercept. There we go, that'll do. So, I said drift fall is probably a more correct term for it. Fall back down to Kerbin. Anyway, that will get us back to Kerbin, and the atmosphere will decelerate us to the point where we can just land. See you then. So here we are, falling back into Kerbin's atmosphere. Land in the night side. As you can see, way more fuel than we needed. This is essentially wasted delta V on the launcher and every other stage that we could have saved by designing this better. Not that it really matters that much, apart from for efficiency's sake. And if they start introducing a resource system in terms of costs and mining, which I believe is the plan eventually, then these things will start to matter, but at the moment it's just the aesthetics of it. I don't know. Technical aesthetics, should we call them? I'm sure there's a better term than that, but I can't think of it at the moment. Sorry about this, it's probably rather dark on YouTube. So I'll just get us down there and land, or rather let the physics take its course. So here we are, with the atmospheric re-entry effects taking place. And I think that's Minmus just there, that little dot just above my mouse cursor. If you can see it on YouTube, I don't know. So that's where we came from. Screenshot time. So I can just dump these things now, but I'll leave them on until we are falling back, so that they don't somehow manage to hit me on the way down. And you can see the spacecraft just flipped around there, thanks to some dynamics of drag or whatever it is that decides that. I think it's just the weight that this is the heavier end, so that naturally turns to face the gravity of Kerbin. At any rate, there's not much to see anymore, thanks to the nighttime re-entry. So I'm just gonna get on down and I'll give you a quick show of what I got in terms of science and what I unlocked after I've landed. See you then. So as you can see, I put a couple more parachutes on than the previous one. We've got the materials bay attached to this as well, plus this top thing. So I don't want to lose any of these bits on re-entry. If we only had the one parachute, we'd be descending too fast, and this would end up breaking our fall, and we'd lose all the science from the Science Junior that we hadn't transmitted, basically. So I didn't know exactly how high the land was here, so I just I performed the re-entry at 1 times speed rather than accelerating, because if you are at 4 times physics warp, when your parachute's open, they often end up ripping off, and you really don't want that to happen. So just drifting on down here. Some of those bits from the rockets survived when they hit the ground. It's quite interesting. Must be made of something very tough to survive that kind of impact. I mean, the deceleration is quite strong, so they would have been going about 90 meters a second when they hit. Oh, speaking of hitting. Less than graceful. Anyway, I'll just show you the science. So as you can see, I got actually quite a bit of science for doing that mission again. Well, 58.5. I didn't get as much as I could have, but seems that the further you go from Kerbin, the more science you get. So as you can see, I've unlocked a fair few parts using that science from that. We've got fuel lines now, some smaller engines, more mechanical bits like the adapters. I got a probe body, which we won't be using. We already had that, but I unlocked more solar panels and batteries, locked the accelerometer and the latest antenna, although I think the major difference between this and the smaller antenna is that it transmits faster, but it allows a lot. It uses a lot more energy. And then I also got some ladders and the barometer. Basically, I'm trying to max out the amount of science I can get from each mission. Just going through this, we'll probably get most of the tech tree unlocked with the next 2 missions, which will allow us to do the more difficult bodies with lots of equipment. At any rate, that's the Minmus mission. Thank you for watching. I'm SteelZenith. Goodbye.